Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Cryptid Tours. Thank you for joining me again. Hope you guys are taking care of yourselves and you're doing well. So, I'm going to read off a couple stories for you, and these will be Dogman stories. Not my usual type of thing, reading stories, but I think a lot of people like stories being read, which I personally do like stories being read. The only thing is, it's very difficult to get news stories. A lot of these channels out here that are kind of cranking out Dogman stories, I'm a little bit suspicious of it, personally. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there are tons of Dogman encounters, but you probably only hear, even now with the awareness of Dogman and different cryptids, we're probably only hearing 20 to 30, maybe 35% of the stories out there. And that's just a guess for me, but you have to remember, a lot of these stories also are coming from people who saw these things years ago, decades ago. So now with the advent of social media, cameras on phones, and just things like that, it's a little bit easier for people to get their stories out. Also, the stigma of having these type of encounters, it's nowhere near what it used to be. You don't really so much get made fun of. I know whenever I am whenever it comes to mind, I'll say I do mention it to people that I know. And also, it's how you approach it as well. How you actually bring up the subject and then divulge what it is that you've seen, or maybe what someone else has seen. That's where you actually keep someone from kind of making fun of you. That's what I've noticed. I've brought this up to some people that would absolutely look at you typically as if you're crazy, saying that you saw a half man, half wolf, or rather a werewolf. But like I said, the way I bring it up and the way I approach the subject with someone who is not in the know, it really makes it easier for them to think, or I'll say, it makes it easier for them to kind of assimilate that type of information into their everyday thinking. A couple people have come back at me and said, "No, you must be crazy," or something like that. But in that particular case, I do show some people some things that at the very least makes them question whether it's real or not. Now, one of my videos that I did a little while back, with the thing reaching in and grabbing the little girl, that is very difficult to refute. Now, some people, as I had mentioned in the on that video, some people said, "Oh, this is just a fake, whatever." Well, the thing about it is, when you actually break down the video, like I did, you start to realize that it would be, first of all, it would be impossible for someone to pull a child that large out, with that type of quickness. And that the video is not sped up or anything like that. So, and then on top of that, why would someone play around like that, possibly hurting their child? It just wouldn't make sense. And then if it was just some random person dressed, having a glove on, that would look like that. Number one, how would they know the child was there? And number two, how would we not be able to see the human hand in that glove? Because that thing does not look at all like a human hand whatsoever. So that means they wouldn't be able to grab the child like that. Anybody out there that's saying that these creatures are not real, I would say, you know what? Go prove it to yourself. Go out in the woods. Go prove it to yourselves. Actually, if you go contact Dark Waters, he has plenty of locations where you can actually go to prove this to yourself. And why is it important to understand that these things are real? Because we don't know what is in store for us coming very soon. Now, I've mentioned before that I am heavily in the Bible. I fully, believe that. And when we look at some of the prophecies that are related to these types of things, even Christ himself said, as in the days of Noah, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. So we know what was going on in the days of Noah. There were Nephilim, all these creatures running around. That was the reason why the earth had to be destroyed. There was a contamination of the human genome, or we'll say the human bloodline. And that's where we are now. We know that there's a lot of genetic manipulation going on. There's just a lot of stuff going on right now with current technology. So, as I said, it's very important for us to understand that these things are very, very real, and it's something that we need to be considerate of when we go out into the woods. Are you going to see it? Is there a huge possibility that you're going to see something crazy like this? It's hard to say. Maybe when people are out in the woods, maybe, just maybe, these things see us, but we don't see them. It's very possible. So, with all that being said, let me get into the first story. All right, this story's out of Boulder, Wyoming, and I think I'm gonna, the person's name is Ken. All right, and this is a fairly short story. The date and time was October 15th, 2010 at 1:30 a.m. So it starts. 8 years ago, my brother John was heading home from his girlfriend's house off a country road outside of Boulder, 11 miles south of Pinedale, Wyoming. It was around 1 or 2 a.m. when he saw what he said was a huge dog traverse down the slope on the south side of the road and commence to run alongside his pickup. He was driving a 69 to 70 Ford F-150 Highboy, which came from the factory lifted. The Dogman was running with him at 30 to 40 miles per hour. There's a 2 to 3 foot barrow ditch running along the road, and the Dogman's head was level with his as he was driving. So John puts his height at about 7 to 8 feet. So apparently this thing was running on 2 legs. He doesn't say that, but it apparently was running on 2 legs. He says it was dark in color with gray or white on its muzzle, running from its nose to under its eyes, which were amber in color. He sped up to 45, and the Dogman kept up with him, often looking inside the pickup. He said at around 50 miles per hour, he lost it, and that's all he would tell me. So that last sentence is, I don't know, it's kind of suggestive. He says that's all he would tell me, or the ending of that last sentence. So I wonder if something more happened. Who knows, right? Who knows? Second story, a little bit longer story. This one's out of Carbon County, Montana. This particular incident happened August 15th, 2004. I'm laughing because I remember August of 2004. Interesting time for me. All right. I'm probably the youngest person to come to you about this. I'm 16, grew up here in Montana, and I'm very active in the outdoors. When I was 4 or 5, I lived with my parents in a small town next to the highway. Our house was right next to it, and my room faced a gravel road. that went into the highway. It was summer and we didn't have AC, so I would leave my window open at night so I could stay cool. One night, I woke up and noticed a silhouette standing outside my window. My eyes focused and I saw that it had a fairy outline, and these frost blue eyes it was using to look at me. I sat up in bed, frightened, but I didn't feel the need to yell for my parents or anything. It just kind of stared at me. While looking at it, I saw that it had pointed ears with tufts of fur like a lynx has, and a muzzle like a German shepherd. It was fairly muscular and was almost resting on my windowsill like it was leaning up against it. We stared at each other for a good couple of minutes. Then it smiled at me like a dog does, and even tilted its head. It then backed away from my window, walked across my yard to our chain link fence, and literally stepped over it. I got out of bed to watch this thing as it got down on all fours and ran down the road and across the highway. Listening, I heard it yip and bark while on the other side, which was a prairie with a butte and then forest. It was almost like it was calling to others. Looking back on this, I feel like maybe it felt like I didn't pose a threat. Maybe it was just curious. Back then, I was just a little kid. Now, I'm a lot bigger. I'm 6'7", I weigh almost 200 pounds. So I'm thinking, if I saw one of these again, I probably wouldn't get the same reaction. Yeah, probably you would, kid. As long as you didn't act aggressively towards the animal, he probably wouldn't mess with you. Now, I'll be honest with you. The whole situation with the Dogman, they definitely bring a different feeling than Bigfoot. And what I mean by that is, it seems as though you never know what you're going to get with the Dogman. Now, we hear a lot of these stories that are pretty much innocuous, right? Nothing really happens. The Dogman just kind of looks and, all that. A lot of these stories that Dogman encounters has highlighted, with the guests coming on. Obviously, these people, don't have anything that really happens to them. Because if it did, most likely they wouldn't be there, right? So we haven't had anyone come on and say they were attacked, like partially shredded up and then, they live, right? It's either all or nothing for the most part. And the reason I say all or nothing is because the people that don't make it, we don't hear from them, right? They don't make it alive or make it out alive to tell their story, which is pretty unfortunate for the victims of such an attack. But, when we have to look at some of these missing persons stories that say like missing 411, and just in general where people go missing. Now, I'm not saying these are all Dogmen. There are many things that can be attributed to people going missing. However, I'm sure there is a small element or a small portion of these people who are encountering some type of cryptid and not making it out alive. I think a lot of these stories, the more graphic stories and I guess tragic stories, are not making it to the public. Some have. And with millions of people that go out into the forests and national parks and all that stuff, I am more than sure there are many more stories that we're just not hearing. A lot of people that have expired who possibly might have encountered something. It brings to mind the story of a park ranger who was saying that one morning he had gone out fishing. I think he said he would typically go out about 4 o'clock in the morning, and as he was coming back in, it was getting to be daylight, and he saw at these people's campsite a very large animal. He said he initially thought it was a horse, a small horse, or a medium-sized horse, I guess. He said then, as he's looking at the thing, he could tell it was actually some type of wolf or, something. He said it definitely looked horrifying. And then, unfortunately, he saw the people that were camping there come. It was a couple coming out of their tent. He said he was yelling at them and waving and all that. I guess he was trying to get them to go back in the tent, but I mean, pretty much at that point, it was too late because the creature had already saw them, and before they even realized what was going on, it apparently jumped at them, lunged at them, put a hand or paw or whatever in each one of them's chest and forced them to the ground and began mauling them. He said that he essentially just kind of was out of it. He just went into shock, I guess, and he found himself I guess on kind of beached. I don't know. When he said this, I was wondering if it was on the side where this couple was, where the campsite was, or if it was another place. Because this all happened at Land Between the Lakes. So if you look at the area there, there's obviously there are lakes on either side of this kind of a peninsula of land, and the lakes are really very large. I mean, I think they're at least a couple miles. The waterway is a couple miles wide or something like that. So I wasn't real sure how all that was, all that played out. But either way, this is what he said. And it was really more of a deathbed confession, I guess. So anyway, that's all I have for you tonight, or rather today. Hope you enjoyed it. And make sure that if you're out in the woods, keep your eyes open, keep your heads on a swivel, and just take care of yourselves. There's a lot going on out there. Me personally, I love getting out in the woods and hiking and whatnot. I always have my force multiplier, and I always make sure I am aware. I'm aware of the smells, the sounds, just any weird feelings. I haven't recently had any weird, well, I take that back. I've had some kind of strange experiences, but it could be attributed to anything. I didn't see anything. But so just make sure you take care of yourselves, guys. And with that being said, thank you for joining me. Take care of yourselves, and God bless.